Welcome back, everybody. It's another Tuesday in Daily Fantasy Baseball, and what a night we had last night. If you guys played on DraftKings, the Swing of the Fences $3 contest, $100,000 to first place, was actually won by somebody that had over 250 fantasy points. That's just absurd. I believe a lot of people had over 100 points on FanDuel, and the scoring was really high everywhere, and it's mostly because a lot of people ended up on Johnny Cueto, and a lot of people had a lot of Diamondback bats against Aaron Harang. So for those that did, congratulations. It was a very high-scoring night, and it was a little bit interesting for a short slate because with everybody on the same players, a lot of the scores were really high. So you may have had a big score, but it didn't really cash too much. But that's what today's for. We got a full slate in action here. 15 games, 30 pitchers. Every single ballpark is going to be in play. So we got a lot to sort through for this slate, so let's get right into it. There are a few aces that pitch today, and I want to discuss kind of the top three. There's Zach Greinke against the Washington Nationals, Madison Bumgarner against the Astros, and Matt Harvey against Colorado Rockies. So of these three, the only one with a really good matchup is actually not that great of a matchup. It's a little bit average, and that's Zach Greinke against the Nationals. Now, Bumgarner and Harvey, obviously, we'll have a little bit of both of them in tournaments because their ability to strike hitters out, despite being in a tough matchup, is something you want to look at and exploit. But I don't like any of these three guys in cash games because, like Matt Harvey against the Rockies, first of all, the Rockies are the best hitting team against right-handed pitching. Madison Bumgarner against Houston. That Houston lineup has a lot of right-handed power that can get to Bumgarner, and that can cause him to give up a few runs. And just like that, at his price, it's going to be tough to overcome. And of course, Greinke against Washington. Washington's bats are starting to come alive a little bit despite losing a lot of games in a row. They scored 8 runs last night. Again, Desmond hit 2 home runs. They have some guys that are getting healthy. So for a guy like Greinke that's going to cost that much, I don't think he's going to strike out a lot of hitters, but a lot of these professional guys back in the lineup for the Nationals. So of these three aces, the only guy I would really like would be Greinke, but I'm just going to be using Bumgarner and Harvey in GPP. I won't have any of those guys in cash at this time. Obviously, the guy that I've talked about a million times, you guys might know who I'm just about to mention. It's a mid-price pitcher now. He was a low-price pitcher, and he's starting to get into the mid-tiers, and now he's kind of the upper echelon up the mid-tier prices. That's Taylor Jungmann for the Milwaukee Brewers. Say about this guy, he's been absolutely fantastic since he got called up. The 2.26 ERA, a whip of just over 1, and his strikeout numbers have been higher than expected. And that's something to note because in the minor leagues, he wasn't striking out a lot of hitters, although he has a very good curveball. You guys will see that tonight against the Cubs, which if you haven't seen it yet, it's definitely a good thing to take note of because that's why his strikeout numbers are up. Now, a guy that's been this consistent since being called up in the major leagues is rare, and I wanted to touch on that because this is a guy that I will be using in all my cash games on pretty much every site for today's slate, and that's because of his 11 starts, he's only allowed 4 earned runs or more than 3 earned runs in 1 start. That 1 start was in Coors Field, and we all know how that can pretty much sway the value of a pitcher, as a lot of those breaking balls aren't breaking, a lot of the fastballs don't have the zip. And that's why a lot of hitters are successful in Coors Field. Now, for a rookie that's just been called up, especially for a team that's been struggling like the Brewers, it's really impressive to say that he's had 10 quality starts, basically in a row if you don't count Coors Field since he's been called up. Now, the one thing about Jungmann is I talked about his curveball. You get a chance to watch it, you're gonna agree with what I'm saying here. Is he's using that very, very well in 2 strike counts to get these strikeouts. And against the Cubs, who he faces on Tuesday, they strike out a ton against right-handed pitching, and they haven't really been hitting right-handed pitching yet of late either. Obviously, they have guys like Anthony Rizzo and Kyle Schwarber that can tear the cover off the ball, but after that, a lot of guys have been struggling. And the one thing about Jungmann is we looked at his consistency. He actually has consistency in his strikeout numbers as well. So if we look at your last 5 starts, he has 8 strikeouts, 7 strikeouts, 7 strikeouts, 5, and 7 even before that. So you're looking at a floor of about 5 or 6 strikeouts, and against the Cubs, who are basically a free-swinging team, I can see that number going up to 7 to 8 as well. So a guy that's very safe, he's been very good in every start, and his strikeout numbers are up. He's my top option on the day, despite not being one of the highest-priced pitchers. Now, there's some cheap options I wanted to discuss as well. There's actually quite a few of them today, and I think that makes for a pretty solid GPP day, and I will definitely have a few lineups mixing and matching these guys. The first one is Taijuan Walker for the Seattle Mariners against the Baltimore Orioles. Now, Walker pitching at Safeco, which is always a benefit to a pitcher because of how big that park is. And if you've seen his last couple starts, he's been up and down, but he has the ability, he has the stuff to pretty much break out a gem at any time. Saw that 11 strikeout game. He gave up just one hit, and it was a home run a few starts ago in a complete game effort. And the one thing with the Orioles is who he's facing on Tuesday. They do strike out a lot. They have a lot of guys that swing the bat a ton, guys like Adam Jones, guys like Matt Wieters, Caleb Joseph even, who's been hitting the ball well. He does hit the ball, but he's strike out a lot. And that's basically what's been said about the entire Orioles lineup, guys like Chris Davis as well. So all those guys can hit the ball when they're on, but when they're off, they swing and miss a lot. And I think it's a big thing for Walker, and it makes him one of the top GPP plays on the day. Now, speaking of top GPP plays, my top guy today will be low owned, and I'll be using him as starting pitcher 2 in tournaments on 2 pitcher sites. That's Hector Santiago. We've talked about White Sox against lefties before, and that's who Santiago faces on Tuesday. They're one of the few top-tier matchups left. We're looking at the White Sox against lefties, the Cardinals against lefties, the Rays against righties, and the Atlanta Braves against lefties as well. So there's only a few of those top-tier matchups left, and we're going to see that today. Now, I can't use Santiago in cash, and I'll tell you why. He struggled of late. His ERA is in the high 2s, and his whip is in the low 1s, so that's very, very good. And he's been excellent in the great scheme of things. But the fact is, of late, he's not been very good, and maybe he's regressing back to the mean because he hasn't been a great pitcher in his career. But I do like his matchup today. He does have a strikeout per inning or just below it. And it could be even more than that in a matchup against the White Sox, who strike out a lot against left-handed pitching. He is, like I just mentioned, one of my top GPP plays today. And he's not as cheap as I would like him to be, but I just think that will make him even further lower owned. The other guy that I wanted to mention is Jeff Locke against the Cardinals. And we just talked about left-handed pitchers against the Cardinals as being one of the top-tier matchups. That's exactly what Locke is today. He has a 2.93 ERA against the Cardinals in 2 starts this season, and a lot of people will look at past games. Now, I'm a believer that the more a hitter sees a pitcher, the better they will be. But it's been a little while since Locke has faced the Cardinals, I believe, so that might not be as big of an issue as normal. Now, that being said about Locke, he does have a great matchup, but his upside is limited. He doesn't strike out a lot of hitters, and I think that could limit his ability in GPP because you're really targeting a big score out of everyone. So if you wanted to go with a guy that has a bit of a good matchup but isn't necessarily a high upside guy, I think Locke would be a good use for head-to-heads if you're looking to have a little bit of a disparity. But I wouldn't use him in 50-50s, and I don't think he's a top play in tournaments because he rarely gets to over 20 points on DraftKings or 15 to 20 on FanDuel. The last cheap pitcher I wanted to talk about is the young Yankee sensation, Luis Severino. Faces the Indians today. Now, Severino was absolutely fantastic in his debut. He only gave up 2 hits, 2 base runners. On the one home run was the only home run he allowed, although he did only throw 5 innings. One of the things about Severino is he's very comfortable from the stretch. Now, we didn't see that very much because he only allowed 2 base runners, but that's something that's good for a young pitcher because when he gets into trouble, sometimes he can get out of the jams, and that's a big thing for a guy like Severino. He's very cheap, and I think that's one reason why I think I would use him today because he has strikeout upside. He has a very good changeup. His fastball has life on it. So for a guy that's as cheap as he is, I believe he's in the 5,000s on FanDuel and DraftKings. He's very cheap on sites like Fantasy Feud and Fantasy Aces as well. So you can use him with a very low risk but high reward play. And if you want to pair him with a more expensive pitcher like a Jungman or even one of the Aces, it can make for a good play in a tournament, especially with his upside. Now, you just heard me talk about these cheap pitchers and Jungman, who was a mid-tier pitcher. So for today, with all the Diamondbacks bats facing David Buchanan, you're going to want to get some of those guys in. The Blue Jays are playing at home in the Rogers Center, and the Angels are facing a weaker lefty. You're going to want to spend on bats. And in order to do that, you're going to need those cheaper pitchers we just talked about. So I think today is a very excellent day to play on sites like Fantasy Feud because the more pitchers you need, the more you can afford to spend on bats. But that's only if you have those cheap pitchers. So I think for today on Fantasy Feud, I'm going to be looking at guys like Severino, guys like Hector Santiago and Taijuan Walker, and 3 cheap pitchers. Then I can fit all those top bats. If you guys haven't played on Fantasy Feud yet, there's a RotoCurve bonus. If you use the referral code CURVE, you get a $100 bonus up to $500. So be sure to take advantage of that. And RotoCurve will give you $25 free just like that if you sign up and deposit of over $50 or more. And you can also use your curve points to get an additional $25. So be sure to take advantage of that. Go over to Fantasy Feud. And for today, it's an excellent day to play for cheap pitchers, which means you can get the bats you want. And that's exactly how people win GPPs. Pretty much brings us to the end of our pitching segment for today. Just wanted to recap real quick. Those top aces, I'm not a big fan of them today in cash. So I think today's the day I'll be spending on bats. I'm going to have Taylor Jungmann in almost every cash lineup. And I'll probably be pairing him with a guy like maybe Hector Santiago, maybe a guy like Jeff Locke in cash, because although his upside's limited, he's pretty safe. But I think right now I'm probably going to have Jungmann, and I'm still working on that second starting pitcher. But that being said, in GPP, I have a ton of options. I'm going to go with Taijuan Walker, Hector Santiago, Jungmann pretty much in every lineup, and even Severino. So be sure to mix and match with the pitchers you do like and find the top 2 guys you like for cash. And on one pitcher sites, it's all about Taylor Jungmann today. So be sure to use that and every other tool you can think about on RotoCurve. We have anything you can possibly imagine. So be sure to use that. You look at the RotoWire lineups page, or RotoCurve lineup page, rather. And the one thing that we like to look at is the weather. Danielle will have a weather update at 5:30 today. There's a lot of games. The chances are there may be 1 or 2 games. It could be a bit of a weather probability or possibility. So make sure to check those out, because if you get a guy that's pitching in a bad weather game, it could really decimate your lineups, and that could pretty much crush your chances of cashing. Let's use all the things we have to our advantage, and once again, let's make some money on a Tuesday night. Good luck, everybody.